Good evening. We're at Buckingham Palace on the second day of Donald Trump's state visit, with the US President praising the relationship between America and the UK, saying it was the greatest alliance the world has ever known. Speaking at a news conference side by side with Theresa May, he said Washington was committed to what he called a phenomenal post-Brexit trade deal, insisting everything, including the NHS, would be on the table. Today, he also held meetings with leading Brexiteers in the Conservative Party and Nigel Farage. But Mr. Trump revealed he turned down a request for talks from Jeremy Corbyn, with the Labour leader addressing thousands of people today protesting Mr. Trump's visit. Here's our political editor, Laura Kuenssberg.
He always draws a crowd, but doesn't always please them. When the president comes to town, controversy is never far. The Prime Minister was his first international guest at the White House. This Kodak moment for the Mays and the Trumps will be one of her last. A press conference with Donald Trump on a momentous occasion, a grand leaving do for Theresa May. Clear even from the niceties, the two have sometimes clashed.
I've always talked openly with you, Donald, when we have taken a different approach, and you've done the same with me. I've always believed that cooperation and compromise are the basis of strong alliances, and nowhere is this more true than in the special relationship.
For any British and American pair, this relationship matters, but nothing ever knowingly undersold by Donald Trump.
Prime Minister May, it's been a true honor. I have greatly enjoyed working with you. You are a tremendous professional and a person that loves your country dearly. Thank you very much. Really an honor. The American and the British people, it's the greatest alliance the world has ever known. Thank you, Prime Minister. Thank you. Thank you.
As the UK stumbles towards leaving the EU, the President has questioned the Prime Minister's approach.
I seem to remember the President suggested that I sued the European Union, which we didn't do. We went into negotiations and we came out with a good deal.
Yeah, that's not such a... I would have sued, but that's okay. I would have sued and settled, maybe, but you never know. She's probably a better negotiator than I am. I think we're going to have a great trade deal, yes. I think we're going to have a great and very comprehensive trade deal. When you're dealing in trade, everything's on the table. So NHS or anything else, or a lot more than that.
That's one of the things thousands in Westminster would rail against, though. These protests weren't fake news, as the President claimed, although there were pockets of support for him, and the crowd's much smaller than last time. Leading the charge, though, the Labour leader, who refused last night to go to the Queen's dinner in honour of Donald Trump.
Together we can make a big difference. Together we can change this world. Together we can bring about that peace and justice. And by our demonstration here today, we've shown just how determined we, all of us, are to achieve that better place and that better world.
But then it emerged from the President's lips. Mr. Corbyn had asked to see him after all.
I don't know Jeremy Corbyn. Never met him, never spoke to him. He wanted to meet today or tomorrow, and I decided that I would not do that. I think that he is, from where I come from, somewhat of a negative force. I think that people should look to do things correctly as opposed to criticize. I really don't like critics as much as I like and respect people that get things done.
It's not all straightforward between the Tories and Mr. Trump, though. Tensions over Iran, climate change, fractures his next opposite number will have to confront. But who?
So I know Boris. I like him. I've liked him for a long time. I think he'd do a very good job. I know Jeremy. I think he'd do a very good job. I don't know Michael. But would he do a good job, Jeremy? Tell me.
All too much, finally, perhaps, for Mr. May. Always an unlikely pair, perhaps. One shameless, one shy. Time is nearly up on this particular duo. The motorcade, of course, as always, will roll on.
Theresa May and Donald Trump are very different characters, very different leaders. And even the careful choreography of a state visit like this can't mask the fractures and the difficulties between the United States and the United Kingdom. But this, of course, is a relationship that will matter for longer and will last longer than two occupants will stay in office.
Some of the contenders for number 10 might meet Donald Trump while he's here. But who was snapped on the way to see him first tonight? An old friend, Nigel Farage. However straight the lineup tonight, though, this president glories in going over the edge. Whoever's the Prime Minister next will encounter an ally who might love appearing proper, but is properly unpredictable too. Laura Kuenssberg, BBC News, Westminster.
Well, as we've been hearing, thousands of people gathered in Westminster to protest against President Trump's visit, with smaller demonstrations in other cities across the country. Our special correspondent Lucy Manning has more.
As President Trump drove by, if he was looking out of his car window, he will have spotted something that looked a little familiar. He admitted he'd seen a small protest, undoubtedly this one, but dismissed others as fake news.
It definitely got inside his head. You know, he was reported after last year saying, I used to love coming to London, but when they put out blimps to make me feel unwelcome, I guess no reason to come to London.
Yeah, but he's come back again and he's got a state visit, so it hasn't worked, has it?
He's been invited by Theresa May in her infinite wisdom.
You are fake news.
Protesters came armed with humour, mocking rather than welcoming the president.
I'm a very stable genius.
It was thousands rather than hundreds of thousands who filled Trafalgar Square and marched down Whitehall, the sounds of protest drifting into Downing Street as he met the Prime Minister.
Why are you marching today?
I'm just sickened that Donald Trump's been inflated here, that he's getting special treatment.
My biggest problem with him is the fact that he is racist, and the fact that the Queen of England stood next to an open racist gesture was absolutely and utterly disgusting.
I understand he's the President of the USA and we have to interact with him and perhaps have him here, but I really don't think it warranted the full state visit.
The crowds are substantial and they're noisy, but what they haven't done is stop Donald Trump coming to the UK, coming to central London and having his state visit and meeting with the Queen.
The Labour leader had boycotted the chance to dine with the president, but not the opportunity to protest against him.
Why did you decide to boycott the state dinner last night? You went to other state dinners with the Chinese leader. Why did you boycott this one?
Sorry, can I just take
Mr. Corbyn, you met with Hamas. Why wouldn't you meet with the American president?
Later, President Trump revealed Mr. Corbyn had asked for a meeting, which the president turned down. There were pockets of tension. A pro-Trump supporter had a milkshake thrown at him and was surrounded by a group of protesters. Others were calmer in their support for the president.
So there's been state visits where, controversial political figures have come before and hundreds of thousands of people haven't protested. So there's a little bit of hypocrisy and double standards in that. I think Trump does deserve a state visit.
The president claimed there were thousands on the streets cheering him. He got the numbers right, but their message wrong. Lucy Manning, BBC News.
Well, our political editor Laura Coonsburg and our North America editor John Sopel are here with me. John, if I could start with you, your thoughts on the day. The president, he was in jocular mood, cracking jokes and so on, but how serious are the Americans about a phenomenal post-Brexit trade deal?
Well, the proof will be in the pudding on all of that, and that's going to be some way down the track. You're right, he was playful. There was a twinkle in his eye. He was very kind of warm towards Theresa May, which hasn't always been the case. And there were some things he said that will have absolutely pleased the British. On Huawei having a part of the 5G network here, he said he didn't think that would damage the intelligence relationship, the so-called Five Eyes agreement, and I think they'll be pleased about that. And then he talked about that phenomenal trade deal. And I think that ministers will be simultaneously delighted and terrified. Delighted because there's the potential there when Britain eventually leaves the European Union that there is a big trade deal on offer. Terrified because the Americans want absolutely everything. And, you know, he said, I'd like a piece of the National Health Service, please. And we would want some of our agricultural produce to come in, even though there are very different food standards in the US to the UK. So that's the bit that will terrify them. And I think that there's going to be quite a lot of kind of going backwards and forwards on all of that. What Donald Trump does about it, well, we don't know yet, because he's got to wait and see who the new leader is going to be. And he was very playful about Jeremy Hunt being there. Would you be a good Prime Minister, Jeremy? And all of that. And you sense that it's going to be these people that are going to get it across the line. And Donald Trump hasn't been elected to make Britain great again. He's been elected to make America great again.
Sure. Laura, I want to pick up on that point with you, because the President, he spoke to a number of leading Brexiteers this evening, as well as Nigel Farage, too. One suspects that if you add up the time he spent with them compared to Theresa May, he probably spent more time with them than he did with the Prime Minister.
That may well prove to be the case. By the time he leaves London tomorrow morning to go off to Portsmouth for the D-Day celebrations, that may well be the case. And in a strange way, well, I think number 10 tonight will think, phew, we got through that without mishap. Because dealing with Donald Trump for any foreign leader is, you know, a risky business, and it should be an enormous day for any British Prime Minister to be hosting the American leader. But there was a sense, really, throughout the day that Theresa May, while I'm sure she'll be pleased to have been praised in that way by Donald Trump, relieved perhaps, she was somehow a bit of a bit player. Most of the intrigue was around what he said very negatively about Jeremy Corbyn, and the awkwardness for Jeremy Corbyn having been revealed to have asked for a meeting and then snubbed by the President, although he had an opportunity to meet him at Buckingham Palace last night and didn't take it, or to which of the Tory leadership contenders he's actually invited to see. Right now, that is a big field, but I understand he's only asked 3 of them. And that says something, too, about the state of the leadership race. So there was a sense today that for the government, this passed without incident with a very unpredictable American president. But it was somehow really about what might come next, where might the risks be, as John suggested, where might the fault lines be in what will inevitably be another tumultuous 12 months in the relationship between our 2 countries.
Sure. OK. Laura Kuenssberg, thank you. And John Sopel, thanks to you.